Anjelica. Anjelica, the spelling she'd started using for call-outs when she was 21, was a 41-year-old part-time care assistant in a care home. She'd stopped thinking of herself as a high-class call girl several years ago. In truth, she'd stopped being one much earlier, if she'd ever been one at all. Her profile had never made it to Grosvenor or Pandora's. Ritzy and Cosmopolitan had been her high points. No matter how many good words the influential men she befriended at parties said they were going to put in for her. Now she only had a page on Tail and Oh But Grateful. All the others had deleted her, even Sugar Daddy. When she'd phoned to object, only one person, the blurb writer, had given her a reason. "Your tits," she'd said neutrally, started sagging. Anjelica had hung up before the woman had finished explaining that younger women had taken her place, and no service looked exclusive with more than 20 girls' profiles up. It wasn't fair she had to have new pictures taken every year. Anjelica sat back on her sofa, the centrepiece of her one-bedroom apartment. Less than a year to go on the payments, she reminded herself. Expensive, but nice. It drew visitors' attention away from the dingy, foam-backed carpet and faded curtains. Her friend Jade had been promising to make her a new pair for months. Anjelica wished her own mother had taught her how to work a sewing machine. Or cook. Wasn't it more than 3 months ago that they'd gone out to John Lewis, where Anjelica had bought the material, the lining, and the other stuff Jade said she needed? 3 months. Bloody lazy cow. Anjelica had a good mind to phone her up and put a bomb up her backside. But Jade didn't always take her calls now she'd got out. She'd been lucky. Found a nice, soft, playable guy with his own detached house who she didn't need to service too often. Jade said having his kids there every other week was a bit of a strain, but other than that, she was well set up. Anjelica looked around her lounge diner and felt tears welling up. She flicked on the TV. A happy family comedy taunted her. She zapped to the next channel. One of those perpetually smiling chefs cooking on a range in the corner of the studio, 10 feet away from a sofa where a blonde girl next door sat chatting inanely with a slightly older, domesticated guy. Didn't they know how ridiculous that looked? Mind you, what the chef guy was cooking didn't look too difficult. And when she finally found a nice rich guy to work into marrying her, she'd certainly have to bring him here for a meal, and the memory of the last man who asked her out forced itself in. She'd been in the hotel bar after seeing a client upstairs who hadn't wanted her all night. And when the guy, an older than she was looking for type, in truth, weren't they all, had come over to her and asked if she'd like a drink, she'd had to sharply remind herself she wasn't working and he wasn't a John. She'd only just caught herself in time, stopping her mouth twisting into a sneer and delivering a crippling put-down. The guy saw her as a date, not a pro, and she needed the practice. If he'd wanted to pay for it, he couldn't have afforded her. Only someone like Molly. Last time Anjelica bumped into Molly, she'd slid down quite a few rungs. Or was it the snake she slid down? She still had a handful of private clients, but no one would put her pick up. So she had to work a couple of shifts a month at Pussycats. But when we first met, she was on the way up. Anjelica stood and walked over to her full-length mirror. Her face tightened. In a year or two, I'll look like Molly looks now. Tits like spaniel's ears. Things hadn't gone as she'd hoped. She'd expected dating to be as easy as when she'd been in her late teens. Before she'd clicked that she was giving away for free a product men would pay for. Well, only certain men, she reflected. Not those boys chasing after her, looking for a girlfriend, maybe one day a wife, a relationship, whatever the hell that was exactly. So far as she could see, there was no such thing. Just a word men used to trick women into believing they're getting something extra. Back then, when she and her girlfriends had gone to the nightclubs, she'd watch as they got themselves all dizzy and hopeful about men. Men who'd ultimately take them home at 2 a.m, give them an unsatisfactory shag because they'd been drinking right up until 2, then never call them back. And next weekend they'd do it all over again until they ended up pregnant and stuck with a guy who'd have to work a job all his life. So she'd given that lark up when she'd spotted it for the con it was. I can get a lot more than that, a lot more, she remembered thinking. Started charging men. One thing led to another, and here she was, 41. Her own apartment, but not the detached house in a leafy suburb she'd visualised. Driving a Suzuki Swift, not a Merc. And still clothes shopping at M&S. Well, when she could afford it. So, plan B, marry a millionaire. An older one who's tired of having to phone up every time he feels horny. One who's no longer thrilled by having a new girl every time. Who simply wants it on a plate, at home, like a regular thing. And she'd have to provide it. Mind-blowing sex whenever and however he wanted it. Show him what a bargain she was. At least while she was landing him. Tried and trusted method. Marrying for money. Everyone knows it works. Women do it all the time. Look at that scene in The Social Network. Those stunning uni girls looking for successful, ambitious men who'll one day be senators or Fortune 500 CEOs, being bussed into parties at Harvard or wherever it was. Except it turned out not to be that easy. Not easy at all, in fact. Sugar daddy sites weren't interested in 41-year-olds. There were no rich men on regular dating platforms. And all those Russian and Ukrainian girls ever managed to land were old men, or working men with their own houses and nothing more. Same with the Thai brides. Well, she didn't intend to sell herself that cheaply. Although she had to admit that when she'd been working the best hotels, she couldn't remember a single genuine millionaire. And another thing, all these dates expected they'd get at least a shag on the first night, not like in the soaps or the movies. Like that scene where they take shelter in the crashed plane in the jungle, and the girl has too much to drink. When she comes on to him, he doesn't take advantage. When they finally do it, it's after he's taken her dancing and bought her new clothes. Romantic. I remember boys treating me like that. Well, just about remember. It wasn't that long after school. They'd get all dressed up, bring me flowers, take me out to a fancy restaurant, pay for everything. The looks on their pathetic faces when I gave them a peck on the cheek at the door. Ha! Suckers. I could look like that actress if I could afford a stylist. Isn't it a funny thing how they never show the actual sex in the movie? Bet if they did, it would look magical. Not like when I had to do one in the back of the hotel guy's car, bent up in half against the back window like a piece of meat. His breath stank of tobacco too. And he still didn't call me, bastard. Low-rent arsehole. Footsteps walked across the floor in the apartment above. A memory of how she'd got the previous occupant evicted. A smile curled her lip. The cheek of the stuck-up sanctimonious cow, questioning her about the procession of men visiting her for a few hours, never to be seen again. Procession? I'm expensive enough not to need a procession of men, thank you, she'd thought. Although you would, you flabby-arsed old badger. When the bitch told her she'd been taking down her customers' number plates, thinking she'd played the winning hand, it turned out to be her fatal mistake. One of those number plates belonged to a solicitor. A regular. Well, he was once, but even so he'd tracked down the landlord as a favour, and soon afterwards the bitch was history. Ha! Replaced by a travelling salesman who worked insane hours and was scarcely at home. The blonde with the suspiciously white teeth was back on screen. smiling at the house-trained male presenter as though they were a couple. Bloody bitch. How many old, fat, bald, whatever they were called, producers was it, did she have to shag to get that cushy job? Now she didn't have to pay for her hair and makeup. Free. Perk of the job. It wasn't fair. She was ready to settle down, give up the life, just like Julia Roberts. A sob racked up from deep inside her. She forced it back down. That wouldn't get her anywhere. Now they were showing a couple at a country hotel. Laura Ashley Flock, Givenchy lipstick, ash blonde, shoulder length, no highlights, blowing across her face as she walked. Quite a sexy look for a girl next door. How would I pull that off? Oh no, I got that wrong. They're not guests. They own the country hotel. How didn't I see that? He's older, no belly, Paul Smith suit. Blue tie, probably a Ted Baker or maybe a Hobbs. Few years too old for the open neck shirt look. Businessman, but not so hungry anymore. Anjelica's thoughts wandered. Businessmen like him paid for this apartment. Miles away from home, after a hard day's negotiating, gets the deal he wanted. It's a victory. Wants to top it off with another victory. Keep that king of the world feeling alive for longer. Easy. Can't use the act like his doting girlfriend tactic for this kind. Needs something stronger. I could either let him think he's made me feel something, even that he made me come, although you have to be ultra careful with that one. Or, even stronger, when he wants to take me up the rear and score one final win to end the night on. And to make sure it feels like a victory for him, I have to push back with just the right amount of resistance. Then he's fast asleep 5 minutes after I'm out of there. So predictable. Anjelica snorted derisively. She looked back at the TV. What's this guy's story? The hotel owner. Hotelier, isn't that the right word? He's slowing down a bit, less driven, comfortable, successful. Detached house, not on an estate, but somewhere where his house doesn't look like next door's. Park Drive or Broadway Crescent. Maybe a village. Wanting to enjoy his money while he's still youngish. And a younger wife. I can't see the ring, but when they do a close-up, she'll brush away her hair to show us all. About 6 or 7 years younger. Naturally pretty. Doesn't need to watch what she eats. Yet. Small waist and tits. How much work did she have to put in? The back door will have been the hardest bridge for her to cross. But just look at her face. She's swooning all over him. Silly cow's committed the fatal blunder and let herself fall for him. Nah, she's too sweet. Even though she's got the ring, she won't have the metal to cash in on it. Make him upgrade her car, clothes, jewellery, holidays, get a trust fund set up. I could do it easy. If I landed him, because landing him would be the tricky part, because... Anjelica sighed as she remembered that time a client's wife tracked her down. Hard-faced cow, she called me. No class. Hard eyes. That's what this job has done to me. I've got to fix that, replace it, with a sweet, trusting look. Innocent, even. No, that's probably asking too much. Acting lessons, maybe. That's how those page 3 tarts managed it. How the hell can I afford them? This time she couldn't force the sobs back down. Cleaning up her face in the bathroom mirror, she watched a hard-faced cow looking back at her. Looking old, worn, weathered, and frayed. Not yet worn out, but... Anjelica thought about the half bottle of Chardonnay left in the fridge. She looked at the clock. 11:30. A day off from the care home. Nothing booked, but still time for an afternoon or an evening appointment coming over the phone. Better leave the wine where it was. Jade might be in. Hubby's at work in the supermarket offices. She might have some ideas. Some encouragement. even though she'd flatly refused to fix her up with hubby's friends. He didn't know about Jade's past. She picked up her phone. Bitch, disconnected me. Saw my name and clicked me off. Cow. What's this? Not now, babe. Got saddled with a sick kid off school. Laters. Maybe Molly then. No, Wednesday mornings were probation. She flicked the goody two-shoes hotel woman off. She'd played her cards right, the lucky cow. The next channel had an American preacher, smooth talking at a massive crowd of marks in what looked like a sports ground. Irritated, Anjelica zapped to the next channel. Adverts. Zap. Butterflies rising up from... No, that was an advert for something else. Zap. More adverts. Now it's a home buying channel. Who is so stupid they'd ring up and buy something off the telly? She paused. Who's so stupid? Loads of people must be. These channels weren't here by accident. She took a closer look. The products were pretty ordinary, nothing special. Marks and Sparks prices, but a notch or two lower in quality. The display women were 8s and 8.5s, but dressed as 6s. Respectable, reliable. And the whole performance sped along just a little too quickly for the marks to think it over, but not so fast they actually felt they were being rushed. Anjelica muted the sounds so she could think. She made a coffee to think better. Then she flicked back to the preacher, but left the sound muted. Anjelica received more than a few pinched looks when she walked into the church foyer. Perhaps she'd have to reconsider her outfit, maybe even buy something frumpy from a charity shop. The greeter, she looked about 90, shook her hand, said something vaguely welcoming. Anjelica wasn't really listening. The foyer had 2 Formica tables on either side of the passage, dotted with brochures, flyers, paperback books. There was a plastic margarine container full of postcards. Cardboard sign saying 50p was taped to it, written in marker pen. The walls had a few charity shop prints of English countryside scenes. The church itself was no better. Embroidered banners hung from every wall. Doves, crosses, symbols she couldn't work out. Jesus is this, Jesus is that, sewn onto them. Every single one of the men had grey hair. No youngsters, no families, no men in her target age group. No band on the stage. In fact, not only no stage, but no room for one. And no robe-wearing choir standing behind mahogany stalls. Instead, there was an old-looking guy in the corner behind a console and a white screen on the wall above the shabby-looking wooden lectern. Anjelica turned on her heel and walked out, throwing an irritated look at the greeter. Waste of my time, she fumed, striding back to her Swift. She pulled up with a screech, drawing turned heads, open mouths, and more than a few disapproving stares. From families, couples with small children. Good. Promising anyway. No single men, though. They'd probably be late, like her. Got better things to do than get here early. She stopped. Think, Angie. You don't know what they're like. Not until you actually meet one. The live streams never show what happens before the God-botherer gets up on stage. Perhaps they were already here. Praying, devoting, confessing, whatever they called it. She'd have to find out the right words and remember them. Or maybe they were chatting up the goody two-shoes Christian women. She walked across the grass towards the paved path. 2 old couples, one with walking sticks, were in front of her, moving like snails. She cut in front of them. But after the service, before she even had chance to eye up the prospective runners and riders over coffee, 2 women had walked her into the church grounds and stopped under the shade of some kind of spreading tree. Both wore hair below their collarbones, crosses on thin gold chains, dresses from Montclair and Monsoon. A attractive, even sexy, but wholesome and clean. Just a light smear of Dior's red cherry. How do I pull that look off? As they turned to face her, Anjelica noticed the first woman, the brunette, had brought a Bible with her. Now she was actually opening it. Anjelica resisted raising her eyebrows. That's taking it too far, she thought. Overacting. If I have to take this charade on, I won't be going all in like her. Praise Jesus, we are not worthy. Stuff that. As the brunette flicked through the pages, the redhead raised a finger. I'd kill for hair that thick and lustrous. We know what you're here for. The redhead's finger was still raised. Anjelica fought hard to keep the sweet smile on her face. That's not very nice, she managed to squeeze out between her teeth. Aren't you supposed to be... But a surprisingly hard look gave her pause. Her eyebrows wrinkled. Exactly, the redhead said, coolly, like a judge banging down a gavel. Forget what you imagine, you know. We're not the soft-hearted fluffies you think. We're the real deal. We lived as sinfully as you do. Once. Before. Anjelica's protest died somewhere in her throat. All right, what am I here for then? She challenged back. The redhead's eyes narrowed. The brunette didn't give Anjelica anything either. If we must pretend, she shook her head, you're here to hook one of our men. She closed her Bible, leaving in a finger to mark her place. Something's made you realise how empty and pointless your life is. You're on the road to nowhere. And you think you can fix it by snaring a nice man with a good job who won't knock you about. She fixed Anjelica with narrowed eyes. I expect you think our single men are marks you can fleece like your customers. Anjelica read the truth reflected back at her in the woman's eyes. Damn, her face must have given something away. So, what's wrong with that? I've got a lot to offer. The finger stopped her again. The redhead nodded to the brunette, who opened her Bible. For the lips of a prostitute are as sweet as honey, she read, lifting her eyes to Anjelica's for emphasis, and her mouth is smoother than oil. But in the end she is as bitter as poison, as dangerous as a double-edged sword. Both women's frosty looks impaled her. Anjelica's temper rose up, but she caught herself just in time. So what, bitch? Get in my way and I'll rip your tits off would be fatal. And then she'd have to start cultivating yet another church. Play nice and innocent instead. How do they act when they're repentant? She racked her memory for movie scenes. Yes, that guy confessing to the priest in the little cubicle. She dropped her head like someone feeling ashamed would. Probably. The redhead stifled a snigger. Carry on, Jess, she told the brunette. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave, for she cares nothing about the path to life. That's you. Cares nothing about the path to life. Can't even pretend convincingly. She staggers down a crooked trail, but she does not know it. The brunette finished reading and snapped the book shut. A whiff of Paco Rabanne blew across the gap. Brothers are for Christian women only. Keep your hands off. Anjelica clamped her lips tight, but it did no good. Treading on your toes, am I? Burst out from her. Is that guy one of your prospects? Both women lifted their left hands in front of her face. Gold bands and two rather impressive diamonds made her mouth twist up in fury as she spun on her heel, storming back to her car. So, Molly said, a little too scornfully for Anjelica's liking. They read you like a book and gave you the gypsy's warning. That's all? Nothing you can't handle. Too right, Anjelica agreed, and took a slug of wine. From their window table, the city's neon lights told them the night was young. Anjelica chose this penthouse bar whenever she'd landed a malleable client, but tonight the two women were alone. "You were always going to come up against this. It's just happened earlier than you thought," Molly went on. "Eh?" Molly signalled the tuxedoed waiter for 2 more spritzers. "Look, I know a bit about this malarkey. I have this regular customer, a priest. Couldn't do the celibacy thing. Don't suppose any of them can, actually, but they have to say they will at the job interview. It's just like signing a loan for a car. Or what you tell the solicitor at the police station. Or," Molly thought for a moment, then laughed, "like getting married. You say some words as though they're promises, but they're just sweet little lies. Everybody knows it's fibbing. They're all in on it. Think of it like probation. You play the game, turn up on time, meet your officer when you're supposed to. Tell her what she expects to hear. She's playing the game too. After a while, she signs you off, and you're free again. Church stuff is just like that. You repent, and you get forgiveness. Your past is forgiven you, or something like that. Can't remember exactly. But the guy, once you've snagged him, will explain it. You get a new start." Molly's eyes lit up. "It's coming back to me. They love this stuff. Absolutely lap it up. Great rejoicing over the sheep that was lost. The prodigal son. The worse you were, the more they love it when you repent. I mean, giving a blowjob to a boy under the table in the school disco isn't very exciting, is it? But what you've done, and me," she added quickly. "I can't tell him all that," Anjelica protested. "I'm telling you, the worse the better." Molly had her finger out. "Go as far as you dare. Remember, all the time you're confessing, the guy will be thinking about when he finally gets you in his bed. He's not supposed to, but he will be. Add a few ecstatic explosions and groans of ecstasy, from the Johns, that is, while you're repenting how guilty you feel about giving them all that filthy pleasure. Make sure he knows how skillful you are, how adventurous, even disinhibited if you have the nerve. Just carefully dribble it all in, drop by tiny drop, as you confess how wicked and dirty you've been. He'll be putty in your hands. He'll dream about you that same night, I promise." Molly sat back, sipped her drink through the straw. Anjelica looked down into the crowded city streets. Bright neon advert panels flashed on and off. Gaggles of half-dressed young women in heels tottered in and out of bars on the main street, following groups of young men, identically clothed in white shirts and black trousers, doing the same. Molly interrupted her thoughts. "Do you know, Angie, I think I'll do the same as you when I decide I've had enough. Great idea, chick." The redhead, Tricia, she'd heard Jess call her, walked right up to her, as quick as an adder striking. Damn! She'd just managed to get the guy to start unstiffening. Jess wasn't far behind her, but carefully kept out of the guy's sight. Anjelica thought she'd timed it perfectly, waiting until he'd moved a few paces from the tea trolley, but quick enough to prevent one of the prissy, cock-starved sisters from squeezing in front of her. And that was as far as she'd got. She hadn't even got his name out of him. "Brian," Tricia had cooed. "God, I wish I could get that down. Just meek enough without straying into submissive. Brian, Sally asked if you could help her stack the Sunday school tables." She gently squeezed his bicep. Without even realizing that he'd been maneuvered, Brian gave Anjelica his apologies and walked away. "Bitch," Anjelica threw at Tricia with her eyes. Had she just been cock-blocked? Or did you have to be a man to call it that? "I was only going to have a friendly chat about the service over coffee," Anjelica said, attempting for affronted but forgiving. Tricia rolled her eyes. Jess arrived by her side. She carried a leaflet against her thigh. "All right then, so I was chatting him up. No law against it." Tricia disagreed. "Our laws are not man's laws. There's nothing behind them. You can't do anything. It's not like you can arrest me." Tricia nodded, almost gently. Helpful rather than friendly. They're different, not imaginary. Our judge sees all. I'll just come back next week. Or pick a different man. Or find out what Bible study he goes to in the week. You can't stop me. We've done this before, Anjelica, Tricia said confidently. Eh? How do you know my name? Anjelica said sharply. Heads nearby turned. Still calm, Tricia gave a half smile. Do we need to go outdoors again? She asked. No. Tricia took out her phone. She moved to stand beside Anjelica so their backs faced the wall. After a few swipes, she lifted the phone up. Anjelica's profile stared right back at her. Tricia replaced the phone in her handbag. Hermes, Anjelica noted. So? You were right all along. So what? I have to live, don't I? And obviously, I'd quit that life right away if I... Anjelica paused. The spark of a question flickered into life, but blew out a second later, unasked. She frowned. Tricia and Jess weren't lacing into her like she expected. If you... Tricia prompted. The question returned, proved harder to extinguish. If I... Well, I suppose it would have to be once we... Anjelica's brow wrinkled. Her mouth was open, immobilized. She looked at the women for help. Earlier than that, Jess answered her. Much earlier. Anjelica swallowed. Right now, in fact. Anjelica's jaw dropped even further. Her face screwed up in pain. A little cry escaped, quickly stifled. Jess turned around to see if any good Samaritans had noticed, were crossing over from the other side to help. None had. She turned back to Tricia, briefly shaking her head. But why should I? Anjelica asked, puzzled. I mean, what do I get out of it? Jess looked at Tricia with pursed lips and a rueful expression. Anjelica thought she was on the verge of shaking her head like a disappointed teacher. She felt anger rising up and forced most of it back down. Look, don't you think that he should first have to promise, before I give all that up for nothing, because it's a lot to lose, you know. Anjelica paused, got her thoughts in order. What I mean is, what's he giving me? What do I get back? Which he do you mean? Brian, obviously. Who else? Or whichever of the others I eventually... Anjelica caught herself before saying catch, but it didn't matter. The women had X-ray vision. Or was that hearing? This time Jess did shake her head, and it was definitely disappointment. She turned to Tricia, her voice surprisingly condemning. She got no intention, clearly. Tricia's face fell. It reminded Anjelica of the boys who'd been hoping for more than a peck on the cheek. She threw the unwanted lesson to the floor and crushed it like a cigarette end. What do I get out of it? Jess repeated Anjelica's words with added scorn. That's what she is. All she does. Buying and selling. Tricia's head dropped and her red hair fell over her face. You gave her a chance, Jess carried on, louder and insistent now. She got it. You know she did. You saw her. Then a second later she dropped it. Spat it out like a dead chewing gum. Tricia flicked back her hair, nodded. Yeah. Men loved the darkness rather than the light because their deeds were evil. Her face was flat as a pancake. We should show Brian, Jess pressed on. Tricia recoiled. Or at least tell him, Jess moderated, before she gets her claws into him. Tricia reached into her handbag for a tissue. Anjelica hadn't noticed her eyes had moistened. Give it her anyway. Jess harumphed. All right. Have it your way. She handed Anjelica the leaflet, adding, I'll be watching you. Anjelica watched their hair bounce as they walked across the room towards two clean-cut men in shirts and ties. She looked down at the leaflet. What the hell is this? What's an alpha course? When the Holy Roller said, "Saved a wretch like me," Molly threw yet another told-you-so look at Anjelica. She rummaged in her bag, found her earbuds and put some music on her phone. She folded her arms across her chest for good measure. She's right, Anjelica thought. She scanned the church hall. More than 100 of them. All ages, although mostly younger than her. Faces ranged from doubtful to questioning to convinced. Anjelica shook her head. I don't get what they're here for. What am I missing? They can't all be here how to figure out how to fake it. And those up on the stage were even worse. They'd already drunk the Kool-Aid. Take up your cross and follow me? What? What could you possibly get to compensate for that? Nah, all that sacrificing and denying yourself just for a man. Not worth it. Far too expensive. Overpriced, in fact, like Ratner's. There's got to be easier pickings out there somewhere. Let's see what me and Molly can pick up in that lawyer's bar. Ledger's, is it called? We'll share the taxi. A thought occurred to her from a long-distant documentary. Mormons are supposed to be rich, aren't they? She nudged Molly and gathered up her bag and scarf. As they left the church hall, the preacher was saying, "Whatever a man shall sow, so also shall he reap." But neither of them heard him.